Today we are going to start with tab 1, the medical journal. Let me remind you again that I would encourage you to do your assignment after you finish this lesson before you start the next lesson. That way it doesn't become overwhelming. So why is this lesson important? The bottom line is that you will get much better quality care for your loved one when the providers know how vigilant you are about keeping track of medical information. I'd like to explain to you how this idea of having a notebook came to my understanding. My husband was diagnosed with a rare cancer and died 5 months after his diagnosis. During that time, he had a 3-day stay in our local cancer hospital. Once he got admitted, there was the usual kind of runaround that happens at every hospital. Who is the doctor providing orders? Unknown. Why hasn't the doctor been in to see him? Unknown. What is that antibiotic for? I'm not sure. Who prescribed the antibiotic? I don't know. And this is really standard in most medical facilities. So during our frustration, a social worker came and made a suggestion that turned everything around. She suggested that we use the whiteboard that is now usually provided in most facilities and start writing down every single person that came into the room and what time they came in and what they did. So if housekeeping came in at 1:12 and emptied the garbage, that went on the board. It was extraordinary to see how quickly, probably within 30 minutes to 45 minutes, the situation turned around. My husband started getting treatment and we started getting answers. How is it going to help you? Well, you will often be asked questions when you are at appointments or in settings, like when was that person diagnosed with such and such? When were they hospitalized last? When did they get treatment for this? So there's a whole lot of stress that's eliminated when you have that book in front of you. You're not going to have to search for information that a doctor wants, or worse, not even have it to give to them. Having that information can change what actually happens, especially in a hospital setting. Another side benefit of the way it helps, if you are like I was and had siblings and loved ones who were not the primary caregivers like you are, they want updates. Well, I would come home after every appointment and take a few minutes to put the notes in the journal. Then I could just copy and paste them in a group email. So everyone was up to date immediately. It was a great time saver and it took a whole lot of stress, not just off me, but about the other family members who weren't able to be there. So let's jump into the meat of this. At the top of every medical journal page should be the following information: the name of your loved one, their date of birth, their social security number, and their health insurance information. And oftentimes there's a primary and secondary health insurance policy. Now, the advantage of using it on a computer is that you can put that on a header and it will automatically print it for you at the top of every page. When you start carrying this portfolio with you, you're going to be amazed at how much you're going to need that information. This should include all medical appointments, hospitalizations, rehabs. I even take it to dentist appointments. Any major procedures or diagnosis changes should be highlighted. Again, you can do that on your computer or you can do that with an actual highlighter. You need those significant things to stand out. Now, it's very important to write notes during the appointments. Do not trust that you have a great memory while you're sitting there and listening to the doctor or nurse give you information. If you start doing this, you are going to be shocked when you get home and realize all the things you had already forgotten just on the drive home. Besides, it's really good for providers to see you writing everything down. If your loved one is mobile and takes themselves to appointments, it's still best to have a second person there to do the writing down. You want to date every single appointment, who the provider was, and a summary of what the appointment was about. I even include things like their weight and blood pressures because sometimes it's helpful to go back and look at patterns and changes.
You may have noticed that the medical journal header lists blood type. You may have to request that your primary includes that in their next set of blood labs because blood tests don't necessarily include blood type. When hospitalized, always ask what status your loved one is when you are there. If they are observation, they cannot stay on that status for more than 2 nights. Insurance might not pay after that. For insurance to pay for rehab after a hospital stay, you need to have been hospitalized for 3 nights, and observation is not considered inpatient. A bill was passed that requires hospitals to inform patients after 24 hours of their status and what implications that might have for insurance, but I suspect this rarely, if ever, happens. Also keep in mind that many people suffer from too much treatment, especially with the aging. Oftentimes there are tests and services that will not actually improve health. Always talk about that with your doctor. Those medical people that are not threatened by your questions are also usually uncomfortable with the way medical care is delivered, just like you might be. They will welcome your binder.
Here is an example page from my dad, and it was during a hospital stay. Now, notice with hospital stays, this also would go for rehabs, you even put the time in. Every detail should go in this journal, even if it seems insignificant. I can give you examples of times when I would be there with my dad and someone would come in and I would ask what they were doing and they would say, let's say, a blood draw. And I would say, okay, great. And what is the purpose of the blood draw? And they would tell me we're looking for such and such. And I would look back at my notes and I would say, oh, but at 12:45, someone already did that. And they would politely say to me, no, they did something else. And I would say, no, actually, I have my notes right here. And I don't mean to make your job more difficult, but could you please double check before you poke my dad? And frustrated, they would leave. But then they would come back and sheepishly tell me that I was indeed correct. The blood had already been drawn. And the many examples of like that would happen. Again, you have to be that educated consumer. Now, what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is that medical professionals are bad people and they don't care. Of course not. But they are part of a broken system. And besides, it's just human nature to be more vigilant when you're held accountable. The other thing I want to point out is that with hospitals, it's important and rehabs to keep a follow-up list. For example, I had a client who was in the hospital for about a week, and I would go there for about 2 hours every day and model for the family how to take notes. And a lot of times when a doctor or nurse is in, they list off a nice long list of the things that are going to be done. Those things get added to a follow-up list so that the next time someone comes in, you can say, Hey, could you tell us the update on getting that OT consult? Time and time again, experience proved out that when you have that information and you have it written down and you assert those questions, the level of care improves exponentially. Here's the thing though, in a crazy system, you need to stay calm and stay tactful. Escalating doesn't help anyone. You can be firm and consistent, but still stay calm. I'll tell you what, one time with my dad, he got discharged from a hospital before 10 a.m. I don't know the last time you've known anyone to get discharged from a hospital, but generally it doesn't start before 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Allegedly, that's because the hospital can then charge insurance for another day. But my dad got out early, and you know why? Because I was a pain in their butt. Not a nasty one, not an unprofessional one, but I consistently held them to task. And you know what? I am totally okay with that because patients should be able to get out when they're ready to get out. So, here is your second assignment. Get out there and start your journal. Get all the information for the top and then start taking it everywhere. I'm pretty sure I can tell you that it's going to take time to develop the habit of doing it. You're going to drive to appointment or you're going to arrive and you're going to go, "Oh, I forgot to bring it again." Maybe keep it in your car for a while till you get in that habit. But you're going to see how helpful it is, and soon you won't leave the house without it. So, good luck, get started, and coming up next, we're going to go over the medical providers chart.